Climate Smart Missoula. Perfect timing, we will be recording today's webinar. That's where we're at these Zoom days. There's our team from Climate Smart is on the line today. Kelly Littleton is our program director. She is really leading the charge around all this exciting stuff around building decarbonization and electrification. And so you'll hear from her later today. Amy Sullenberg is our executive director. She's helping run tech. And I think Mary Sullivan is our latest addition to the Climate Smart team. She's going to be joining, she's on as well today too. So that's who we are at Climate Smart, and we're really excited to welcome a great panelist of folks to share lots of really important and useful, we hope, information about electrifying everything. Just a kind of we couldn't come up with any other word other than disclaimer, but it just this is such a big topic. It's huge. We recognize that there's a lot that we could say, way more than could possibly be covered in an hour. So, you know, our esteemed panelists will do their best to go through things quickly and clearly, but this is just the beginning of this conversation and this work. And we know that you may have questions that don't get answered. We hope you'll still share those questions because they also help us understand where we're at as a community and where we need to go. So that's kind of our big setting the stage here. We're excited to dive more deeply into the electrifying buildings and homes and what that means, what steps we can take as individuals and as communities. So today with us, our panelists are Ann Hedges. Ann's the Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs with the Montana Environmental Information Center. Ann directs MEIC's program work, including legislative policy and legal activities. She is a policy expert with MEIC since 1993, and she oversees all program work with a focus on climate, fossil fuels, clean air, and energy. So you'll see shortly why we invited her to help us kick off this conversation today. We're also joined by Reid Prison. Reid is with McKinstry Consulting, and he has over a decade of experience in the built environment. His technical background includes project development through data acquisition and energy analysis. Reid currently works to develop and manage large-scale projects focused on energy savings, emission reduction, and deferred maintenance, mainly for public entities, including the city of Missoula, Missoula County, and University of Montana. Sarah Ayers is a founding partner of LOCI Architecture and Design, and her work embraces the spirit of collaboration and is inspired by place. She's dedicated to the craft of building that is in harmony with the environment and enhances the lives of its users. Good stuff. And Luke Jackson is also with us today. Luke is another founding partner of LOCI Architecture and Design. He is inspired by the positive impact that good design can have on everyday life. And his work with LOCI is focused on pursuing thoughtful, simple design solutions in the Mountain West. And last but definitely not least, Paul Herendeen is with us. Paul is the Director of Impact Market Development at Clearwater Credit Union, where he works to advance Clearwater's social impact mission, including renewable energy and corporate carbon accounting. In his previous work, he was a scientist working on soils, hydrology, forestry, and biochemistry with a focus on terrestrial cycling of greenhouse gases. So we've got folks with lots of varied expertise here joining us today, and we're really thrilled. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, that reminder Kelly just threw in there. We're going fast through all this stuff. Throw your email in the chat or message one of us if you'd like to get all the details. So no need to take notes. Just sit back and enjoy. And I will start by throwing the first question of the evening to MEIC and to Ann. And we've invited you all here because we couldn't think of anyone better to talk about the health and climate implications and dangers around methane gas. And you all have such deep expertise there. So Anne, could you start by telling us what the landscape looks like in Montana around methane gas consumption and development, kind of the big picture, and why we should be concerned, what the health, climate, and ecosystem impacts are?
I will do my best in a very short amount of time. This is a presentation that could take a lifetime, so I will try to not take a lifetime since there are great speakers that I really want to hear from. But Abby, is it okay if I share my screen and run through some slides quickly?
Yes, absolutely.
As fast as possible. Let me, wait, I think I just shared the wrong thing. Let me stop share and do that again. There. Okay. So just quickly, the reason we're here is because suddenly I think all of us are realizing that coal is not the only thing we need to do to try to address the climate crisis. And we have seen so much recently from the IPCC report in particular, talking about how reducing methane, this sentence here, reducing methane is the easiest knob to turn to change the path of global temperatures in the next 10 years. And let's talk briefly about why that is. If I can forward my slides. There. First off, I just want to make sure we're all using the same terms. I never use the word natural when we talk about gas, because natural gas is actually deep underground. Once humans bring it to the surface, it is no longer natural in my mind. It is methane gas, because gas is 85 to 95% methane. And you hear all sorts of terms for it these days, but we generally are calling it methane gas, fossil methane gas, frac gas. But we should be calling it not natural gas. That's an industry term. My computer's being very slow about forwarding. And right here is a confusing slide, sorry, but the concentration of methane gas right now in the atmosphere is higher than at any time in the last 800,000 years. That is because of humans. And the problem is methane gas may not stay in the atmosphere quite as long as carbon dioxide. 19% of carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere in 1,000 years. But methane gas over a 20-year period is 86 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. So in the short term, methane gas can cause a lot more damage. There's a lot less of it as time goes on, but for the immediate impacts, it is this information right here which causes so many scientists to say that methane is the thing we really need to work on in the next decade and decrease, because it's so potent in the short term. And as you can see, US energy consumption has been increasing over time. But what is concerning to me is if you look here on this graph, you see coal. And as coal has declined in recent years, you can see that the space has been taken up by natural gas. So it's been taken up by methane. And that's a problem, because the most recent data shows that this is in the United States, we are the black line right here. That is us. And we have to, according to the most recent study, saying, how are we going to stay under the 1.5 degree target, that not Northwestern's 2.0 target, but the 1.5 degree target the countries really agreed to at the Paris Accord? We have got to, in the US, we have to decrease our reliance on methane gas like this. This is our trajectory. We need to reduce it by about 3% per year until 2050. That is a remarkable amount of methane that we need to decrease in the United States. They categorize countries differently, or sectors of the world differently, but the US is that black line. We need to, according to this report, have hit peak methane emissions 2 years ago in 2020. So this is really, really concerning when you think about how much there is in our economy. So there's a lot of ways from cradle to grave. Methane gas starts out by being drilled out of the ground. And at the wellhead, you have flaring, where you're taking methane gas and you're burning it off. That creates CO2. Not all of the methane is burned. Some of that methane goes directly into the atmosphere. Some goes in as CO2. But flaring is absolutely a problem in this country. And you can see on this graph how much flaring has increased in recent years. That's venting and flaring. Then the problem is the entire infrastructure in the system is leaky. So you can see that pipelines, they leak about 2.3% of their product each year. So that's an awful lot. And when you look at the incidents, so pipelines are dangerous, they leak, and there's explosions, there's people who die, and there is an entity in the federal government that tracks this. And these are the numbers. So the incident count of pipeline problems, significant and serious pipeline failures, really, they're over 600 incidents a year. So it's a safety issue. It's really a safety issue for those people who have to live next to pipelines, like those poor folks in Laurel, Montana, who are looking at a Northwestern pipeline that's winding its way through their neighborhood. You can see in Boston a few years back, they did an analysis of how many methane leaks there were just in the Boston area. And you can see this graphic showing how much leakage there was from the pipeline system and from buildings and homes. It's really remarkable. Then you see that we have an awful lot of gas reserves. We have so much methane gas reserves. And what needs to happen? That needs to stay in the ground. If we cannot keep all of this, and you can see how it increased when fracking kind of came onto the scene in about 2008, 2009, you can see how much available reserves there were. And we simply cannot realize those available reserves, or else the climate truly is toast. I'm not going to talk about cooking health effects. I'll let somebody else talk, but I will say there's serious indoor air pollution related to using gas in your stoves and in your home. I'll talk about it. PM 2.5, you know, it's a lot more. PM 2.5 is released from gas than from electric stoves. Nitrogen oxides, gas burners add 25 to 33% to the week average nitrogen oxide concentrations in our homes. So, you know, your levels are 50 to 400% higher in homes than with gas stoves and electric stoves. Carbon monoxide is higher, formaldehyde is higher. And this I thought was a really interesting statistic. And I'm going to tell you, I just poached directly from Lori and Rob Byron, who work for Physicians, Montana Physicians for a Healthy Climate. And they did a presentation for MEIC back in the fall. And it was a wonderful presentation. You can find it on our website. I encourage you to go there. But I think this is really interesting. So we have outdoor standards for something like nitrogen oxides. And you can see that the EPA's national standard for nitrogen oxides, NOx, as they're often referred to, is 100 parts per billion in the air. But when you look at, there is no indoor air guideline for nitrogen oxides in the United States. But when you look at what the measurements are for gas stoves, whether you're baking or you're roasting or you're frying or you're boiling, all of those are over the outdoor limit for nitrogen oxide air pollution. So what the answer is to all of us who have wonderful stoves that we love so much is to start thinking about how do we transfer over our use of our gas stoves to something like an induction burner. This is my stove, and I use my induction burner, which I place right next to my gas stove. And I use that almost exclusively in order to decrease the methane emissions in my home, the nitrogen oxides, the carbon monoxide, the particulate. And that's something that, you know, for $50, everybody can do. And I would encourage you to think about it. The efficiency levels are tremendous. And then finally, sorry, one last thing. This I thought was so cool. It just came out in the IPCC report, and it says, how do we get there? How do we deal with these problems of climate change? What are the solutions? And what this chart shows you, and I encourage you to go look at the IPCC report. This is in the policymakers summary, and it shows us that for cost-effective options to energy development today, wind and solar are the very top two. And for energy production, wind and solar have the most potential at the lowest cost that's available today. We have the technology. Just looking at this chart, there's no doubt that we have the technology in this country to decarbonize. We don't have the will because we have, in my opinion, we have utilities like Northwestern Energy who are going to continue to get rich off of the deployment of gas resources. It wants to build a whole lot of new gas plants. We can talk about those in the questions and answers if you're interested. And then here's the building sector. This is the types of things, energy efficiency, things we can do in the building sector to lower our emissions. And that's more efficient lighting, demanding different energy efficiency. We don't want that slide. But the main takeaway from the IPCC report that came out this week is A, we are in deep trouble. We are in really deep trouble, but we do have these tools available to us today to address the problems that we're facing. So we have to get off methane gas. There's just no doubt about it. We have to do it as quickly as possible. And I'm happy to answer questions later if anybody has them. Abby, I'm done.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, it was an impossible task to ask you to give such an overview of such a big topic so quickly, and you did a great job. I think, you know, the gist is we know that we need to get off fossil fuels and off gas specifically in our homes and buildings. We're learning more and more about those health impacts. We've known about the climate impacts, and that's the issue before us. So lots of people plugging induction stoves, and that's great to see. We'll throw, there's a resource, I know MEIC has got a great kind of short PDF that we can put in the chat too, a kind of summary of some of those dangers of gas to have on hand. I am going to open it up to the other panel and move on with some other questions. We know that you all may have questions as we go along here. Hold on to them. We will have a little bit of time at the end for those questions. I wanted to mention, I think we might be joined by some other some contractors who do work around electrification projects on the call with us today. I see Rick Craig here, so we may get those folks engaged in the conversation too. So maybe this is a good transition, then I can just tap Kelly to speak a little bit more, and kind of mentioned stoves, but can you just give us a little more of an overview of, you know, what's the big deal about electrification? What does it mean? How is it the linchpin for kind of broader decarbonization, that kind of buzzword? Can you tell us a little about what that means and what it might look like in our community and in Montana?
Yeah, thanks, Abby. Can you guys hear me okay? Just making sure, perfect. Yeah, so maybe just to step back real quick and set the scene. In Missoula, building emissions make up over half of our community's GHG footprint. And we all know that to ensure a livable future, and you know, I'm sitting here looking at Snowball right now, maybe to ensure that we all have better snow days up at the hill, we need to slash emissions quickly and at scale. When I get excited, or why I get excited about buildings and building electrification specifically, is because it is just such a big piece of this emission pie, which means we have such a great opportunity to reduce our impact and, like Anne said, wean ourselves off of methane gas. So what does it mean when we talk about building electrification? We essentially mean switching all of our appliances and systems in our buildings that typically run off of fossil fuel combustion with high efficiency electric appliances with the ability to run off of increasingly cleaner sources of energy. So I'm talking about your gas furnaces and boilers, your gas stoves, and swapping those for air source heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, and induction cooking. So at the end of, oh, sorry, my headphone just like, anyway, at the end of the day, we want to get to a place where we're supplying high-performing electric systems on the demand side with cleaner sources of energy like solar on the supply side. So in terms of technology and prioritizing systems, Heat pumps are the big one, and essentially the enabling technology of electrification. In a building or home, most of the energy demand comes from our space and water heating systems. So if we can electrify that piece, that's already tons of metric tons of CO2 saved in the system's lifetime. And I could sit here and talk about the importance of buildings for probably longer than anyone else wants to stay on this call, but I also think it's important to talk about electrifying everything from our transportation sector to industry and manufacturing to really have this holistic vision of decarbonizing our energy use. So along with kind of the benefits of building electrification, on the efficiency and economic side, heat pumps specifically typically perform at levels that are much more efficient than their gas counterparts, even in colder climates like ours, so up to -15 degrees. And I'm sure some of the buildings professionals on this call can speak more accurately to that. And this is also a big asterisk. While this often equates to lower monthly utility costs, especially for heat pump water heaters, which really makes sense now, the savings that you might see from these efficiency gains reflected on your bill really depends on your specific project, equipment, energy cost differential between gas and electricity, and what fuel type you're originally switching from or starting out with. Like Anne mentioned, there's these kind of often overlooked, there's a lot of attention around building electrification for the emissions and efficiency gains, but I think it's really important to highlight the health impacts. Like Anne mentioned, there's some really harmful parts about cooking with gas, and there's some studies that show that households using gas systems have higher or significantly higher rates of asthma and other respiratory illnesses due to those increased amounts of air pollutants indoors. And there's also this kind of community resilience piece. So we know that electrifying our buildings and switching to kind of this cleaner and more resilient grid leads to more service flexibility, a reduction in peak loads, and can even help prevent blackouts, which also kind of becomes this health and safety issue as well. So that's a relatively rosy picture of electrification. And I think if I were on the other end of and kind of listening to this, I'd kind of ask myself, what's the catch? If it makes sense economically, if it cuts down emissions, if it is good for our health, why aren't we doing it now? In reality, especially with retrofit scenarios, it can be complicated. Typically, heat pumps and electric technologies are still fairly new and come with a higher initial cost than some of their gas counterparts. And I think homeowners struggle with weeding their way through different trade-offs and trying to understand what makes sense for their budget and kind of all the kind of nitpicky decisions when it comes to retrofitting a project. But on our end, so Climate Smart, the city of Missoula and Missoula County is partnering on a program called Electrify Missoula, aimed at decreasing these barriers for residents looking to make the switch. So can we fill that information gap? Can we connect people to contractors to better answer some of those questions for residents looking to go electric? And can we really collate financial resources to help subsidize that initial cost and make those technologies cost competitive with gas counterparts? So yeah, I think it's really important to talk about the demand side and the technology side of electrification, but it's also important to mention that we need to also talk about combining these efforts with weatherization efforts and building envelope and some of these other kind of green building principles that are kind of square one of energy efficiency and energy use. But I think we can drill down more to specifics and logistics with the rest of our panel. But yeah, that was my spiel, and I guess I'll open it up to the rest of the panel now, Abby, okay, great. So this question, I'm gonna throw it to either Reid or Sarah and Luke on the call. How does going electric fit into the broader scope of green building practices? And can you share some of the work you're doing to accelerate electrification? So maybe LOCI, if you want to take that one first.
Absolutely. Sarah will start, and then I'll back clean up on that.
I feel like you could start too. We're doing a number of projects currently right now in Missoula that we are focusing on going all electric. A lot of these tend to be focused on new homes. There's more appetite for it because we're doing all new systems. Retrofits, as you mentioned, are challenging to do, or more challenging, and oftentimes when we are doing remodels projects, we're not redoing entire systems in homes, so it takes a pretty significant project to kind of trigger that piece of it. Definitely something we always talk about, but I think the other piece to it on the flip side is, like, we always look at building envelope initially and try to reduce loads. So whether it is a gas system that's in place, or if we're going all electric, that the loads are greatly reduced. And that is our number one first step in any project, is to look at those pieces and then try to adopt the right system for that. Luke?
So I think some of the challenges that we see on the residential side, so we're typically using a residential mechanical contractor, and there's not as many mechanical contractors that are comfortable with and know a lot about all electric systems. The cost of those systems, the ductwork really is not all that much different, but the equipment costs are double, triple what a gas-fired furnace is. And then from the operation standpoint, as Kelly said, these are massively efficient systems, but with the differential between natural gas prices and electric prices here in Missoula, the operational costs are significantly higher with an all-electric system than a gas system. So it really, kind of suggests, hey, when you're going, electrification, full electrification route, you should be really thinking about some kind of on-site renewable energy, solar panels, obviously being the easiest and most available around here. So really, to do it in the most, kind of thoughtful way, you're spending a significant amount more money upfront, but completely worth it. And right now it just takes more of a dedicated owner and a driven owner to pull it off right now with where costs are.
And I think just to pile on a little bit on that, we are finding, just at least in our industry, or where people coming to us, is that most people are asking now, how do we go all electric? How do we make that happen? And willing to put that outlay of money. So that's something that is a real shift in the last few years. I think some of the work is from you guys actually just getting the word out there about it. That's part of it. And just like this more awareness about climate change and what the impacts are, and people are seeing those impacts and recognizing that some decisions they can make, maybe they cost more, but the decisions they make actually have real impacts on their lives and everybody. So that's really encouraging. And I think that we'll continue to see that as Missoula is developing.
And then what we see on the commercial side, and I'm sure that Reid can talk about this a little bit more, is that cost differential is significantly more than it is on a single family residence. And so it's just, once again, it just takes more of a dedicated and driven owner to do that.
We'll hand it over to you, Reid.
Yeah, Reid, we'll toss it to you.
Well, it's so spot on. Really, Kelly, really nice summary, and then really good points. I think one of the things that does catch a lot of people is the upfront cost, right? And one of the ways that we help owners or public sector clients reframe the cost issue is an incremental cost. And that concept can be applied both to a new construction as well as a retrofit. And so when you're looking at new construction, you've got a basis of design that a lot of times is going to use natural gas or methane gas as its fuel source, right? And as LOCI just pointed out, a lot of times that's the cheaper equipment. And then so you're paying twice as much for some heat pump technology. Your first cost isn't twice as much though. It's half again, right? And so when we start looking at savings, the picture doesn't look as grim when you're looking at, well, I'm really only spending, half again as much to get there as looking at that whole first cost up front. So it can be helpful. And then the residential side of that would be, and this comes to kind of a timing piece too, right? Is you get the question, well, when should I consider these kinds of upgrades? When is the right time? If you are a motivated owner, like LOCI was saying, tackle it now. Tackle it whenever you can, when you want to do it. Especially because with supply chain constraints right now, you don't know what prices are going to do over the long term. Absolutely deflationary, but currently there's no better time than now. But another useful way to look at it is with the end of useful life in mind of your existing system, right? And not all projects are new build, not all are modern houses. There's a lot of old furnaces, there's a lot of old boilers. And so what is the cost to replace that boiler versus can I put a split system heat pump on my house? And so again, we're talking in multiples of price, right? If the new boiler is $2,000, the split system heat pump is probably $5,000, right? But it's a $3,000 differential instead of that $5,000 total upfront. And so it becomes a little more digestible, and the economics become a little more real, a little easier to tackle when you start thinking in things in that term of incremental cost. One more point that was already mentioned that I want to totally double down on is that kind of, I refer to it as step zero, but it's that other conservation piece is just so important, right? And the car analogy is a little tired, but you wouldn't jump in your car and go for a big long road trip without making sure everything is up to snuff, in good shape, and ready to go. And really that same concept applies when you're looking at electrifying the systems in your building, right? You want to make sure that your load is reduced from efficient LED lighting. You want to make sure that there's no unwanted air infiltration, that you're putting affordable insulation in the easy to get to areas, right? Because all those things reduce the capacity of the system that you're going to need to install, which then reduces that first cost even further. So instead of buying, for example, a 3-ton unit, maybe you can buy a 2-ton unit for your townhouse. And so that reduces that cost pretty commensurately with that size of that piece of equipment. So that's another really important piece that can kind of help with that first cost, sticker shock value.
Thanks, you all. That's really helpful just to hear how kind of professionals approach some of these questions. Kelly, I hope it's okay if we just switch the next 2 questions around, because we kind of got on the topic of costs here. And so, yeah, I just wanted to maybe keep going on that a little bit and take it a little bit bigger. We know that the costs, at least where things stand right now, are often an issue, especially, on individual projects, but as well as, at scale with larger development. And it can be tough to prioritize, these energy and sustainability upgrades, given that affordability and housing are such huge issues and huge topics in our community right now. Are there other ways we can think about this? Are there financing options that are available to offset costs? Paul, I'd love to throw that one to you for a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. In a lot of respects, this is the easiest part of the conversation tonight. Basically, Clearwater and other banks, Clearwater specifically, we love to finance this stuff. There's a lot of ways to do it. And if there's a financing need that's not being met, we'll figure it out. That's the short version. The longer version is there's a couple of ways you can finance it if you do want to take financing for this. We do offer a very easy to get unsecured loan for efficiency upgrades. Unsecured meaning we don't have a position on the equipment, we don't have a position on the house. It makes it very fast and easy for us to approve. Of course, as the architects and engineers, I think would agree, the best time to do this kind of work is if you have a project you're already doing, if you're already in the house. So very easy to roll that into however you're financing a remodel project. And then on the commercial side, the state recently authorized what's called CPACE, which I won't go into in detail, but it is a really cool financing mechanism for commercial buildings that allow you to finance energy efficiency upgrades as a property tax assessment. That sounds kind of dry, but it does a couple of things for you. It allows you to transfer the assessment with the property. That's really the big one, because that lets a lender lower the rate and push the term out. And the term is really what is going to drive the kind of economic performance of the system. So if you can do a 15-year term on the loan, all of a sudden, maybe your savings are actually greater than the cost of the loan. You're saving money every month. So that just got passed. Missoula just opted in. And as far as I know, nobody's done a project yet, and we're all looking for one to kick the tires on this. As far as the economic performance, does this make sense to do for yourself? That's a fairly straightforward calculation. I don't have one handy. We have something like this for solar, but it's pretty straightforward to say, this is the cost now, this is how much I'm going to save, what kind of return am I getting? And that's one way I like to think about this stuff is it's not just a cost, it's an investment. It's a revenue generating investment that's going to return to you. And that performance is pretty predictable. You have a very good idea of what's going to happen. You can make some guesses about what you think energy prices are going to do, but by and large, it is a very reliable, low risk, not zero risk, but low risk investment. And we're in a very low rate environment. I mean, if you can get 2% on a treasury bond and you can get 7-8% on solar, something similar on efficiency, that's a really profitable, safe investment if you're looking for somewhere to put some money. So that's kind of the financing side in a nutshell. I'd be happy to go into any level of depth on any part of that, but that's the gist of it.
Thanks, Paul. That's great. A good addition to the conversation. We'll keep moving for now. We've warned you it would feel like a lot in 1 hour, and I know that's the case. But a couple more questions. We've kind of been at a little bit of a high level here and talking about the theoretical, and we know that I wish we could give advice on every single project and people who are wanting to do this electrification work. But for those of you on the call today, every project is very situational, but are there some, say you're a homeowner or someone in the position to maybe be looking into electrifying their home or building? What are some of the key decision points or factors to consider when making some of these decisions? Are there anything we haven't covered yet that you all would share on that?
I guess I've got kind of 3, and we've already talked about 2 of the 3. The one is that step 0, tackle that first, right? Get the quote low hanging fruit out of the way and get ready for a bigger project. The third is kind of that timing piece. Are you ready to tackle it? Do you want to wait a few years until your existing equipment wears out? There's a balance there though, right? Because there's a cost of waiting piece to that. You could incur some equipment failures and some repair costs that would then make your financial picture worse. There's also, if you're looking at an energy savings project, there's that lost opportunity cost of the additional amount you're paying every month in utilities versus doing that project now. So that starts to add up. And then that middle one kind of is how do you prep for this? And when we're talking electrification, you're impacting a lot of systems. And so going all the way back to the utility, depending on where you live, rural or urban, let's focus on urban for a minute. Blocks or section of blocks are served by a utility transformer. And if you're adding a substantial amount of load, you may even need to contact the utility and say, hey, I'm going to add this heat pump. This is what it might do, you know, and they'll say, hey, thanks for the notice. And, you know, they'll check if you have capacity on your block. How that affects you more directly is the electrical distribution system and the main panel in your house, right? And so as an example, like a 3-ton heat pump is going to add at 220 volts, probably a 25 to 30 amp breaker. And so you need to have space in your panel for that. You need to have capacity on your service. And so having an electrician or an electrical engineer take a look at that and evaluate it for you and make sure you have that capacity is really critical. So that can be kind of a barrier too to consider when diving into these.
Maybe I'll chime in real quick after that. I kind of did a little about face when Reid is talking about waiting to the end of the life to replace a system. I think a lot of what we're up against with electrifying our buildings is a lot of people have an older gas boiler or furnace, and you know, there's an emergency situation in the middle of the winter and they need heating now, and they would just replace it for like replacement. I totally agree with you, Reid. I think people need to be smart about their budgetary concerns and plan it out over the long term, but maybe before you get to the point of that end of life system, have a plan in place so you're not just kind of emergency mode, calling your contractor, trying to get a like-for-like gas system in there to replace that older system.
100%. I mean, that's a great point. And another clarification I might make too is end of useful life is an industry term that we throw around that doesn't almost mean exactly what it sounds like. So many systems are actually past their useful life. And so you should be in that position, exactly what you're talking about. You either have a contingency plan or you're taking that action to get it replaced. You know, this falls into a category in the commercial sector that we call deferred maintenance. And it's staggering, right? I mean, most buildings, most systems in the public sector are in a state of deferred maintenance, actually. And so these are systems that are technically beyond their useful life. So that's a great point.
I'll just jump in kind of with our last prepared question here. It's along the same lines. And then I think we have time to take an audience question or two before we kind of wrap up and share some calls to action with you all. So if you have a question that's burning that you feel like would be relevant to a larger group, or even if it's not, we do want to hear your questions because, like I said, it does help us understand where we need to go. But feel free to dot that in the chat. But my question for you all, speaking of end of useful life, this is kind of personal, but I live in a 1930 bungalow in Missoula. It's lovely and quaint, but our boiler is from 1960. It's basically a giant cast iron tank with a big gas flame under it. It's the last thing in our house that's not electric. And you know, I'm sure we're not alone. You know, the thing keeps going and going, but Kelly, you're making me realize we should have a plan for getting rid of it before we get caught off guard. But you know, this is probably a somewhat common situation. You know, if I have an older home with a gas furnace or boiler and I'm interested in switching to an electric system, is there what's the place to start? You know, what kinds of questions could I be asking a contractor as I'm looking into this work?
We'll go and speak up. So, you know, for replacing from a gas system to a, you know, an all electric system, you're going to need both a mechanical contractor and electrical contractor because, you know, you'll be pulling, you know, as Reid said, you may need to update the service on a 1930s bungalow because the service sizes were much smaller traditionally. So yeah, so you're going to be needing a mechanical contractor and electrical contractor. You know, depending on the mechanical contractor, they have, well, most mechanical contractors have a relationship with an electrician that they can pull into the project to pull it together. So that's the kind of DIY, you know, method of making it happen. It's reaching out probably to a mechanical contractor first. You know, and then there's obviously a bunch of design professionals around Missoula that can, you know, help make connections to folks and make that happen. Typically on the residential side, these systems are, you know, kind of design build by the mechanical contractor. There are some cases where we design mechanical systems on residential projects, but typically it's more of a design build situation. And really what that means is that the mechanical and electrical contractors come in, evaluate, you know, the pieces that you have in place and determine what needs to be done to swap out systems. Anything else?
I think the other piece is like the efficiency of just plopping it into an existing ducted system is the way we would distribute things in a 1930s house versus what we do today is a little different. So depending on the level of efficiency you want to bring in, there might be some other ducting work just to make the system work better for you. So you're not, let's say, pulling it up to 80 degrees to get it to 70 degrees, you know, in the right places. So better distribution actually does help reduce loads, I think, because you're getting it to the right places. That also involves a lot more work. So it just, I think that's like one of those things of how far do you want to take it? But I think that's one of the pieces that you can determine on early in that planning stage of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for taking that that question. I know it's kind of unfair, but these are the kinds of questions, you know, that come up around these projects, and it can be challenging. You know, our dream is to someday have a one-stop shop in our community where, you know, folks from developers right on down to your average homeowner could come and get some of these questions answered and work through projects. So, you know, that's our dream. We're holding on to it and we're going to work for that. But in the meantime, I think there's just, there's a lot of power to be had by people who are willing to go through these projects and share their stories and help pave the way for making these kinds of changes more common and more available to everyone. Are there any, let's see, what time do we have here? Oh, Sarah, yeah.
So I guess one of the things, so, you know, I've been reading the chat comments a little bit too.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about at all is the, you know, gas boiler system actually. So typically, so yes, you can go electric for, you know, the boiler system. Current codes actually require that you have some kind of fresh air coming into a home. So a traditional old boiler system in anything from commercial buildings to residential buildings actually really don't have very much air movement through the buildings. And so really to bring it up closer to code and to have a more healthy home, just an overall, yeah, you want to start pulling some air into these older buildings. And that there's a bunch of different ways of doing it. You know, so there's some really simple little kind of, I think they're called Lunos.
Lunos, yeah, through wall.
Lunos, which are through wall pieces to pull fresh air into the building. But then there's, you know, HRV systems, ERV systems, which are really kind of a ducted, more of a ducted mechanical system in the home. So I guess the point there is like the older buildings that that are only fed by a boiler system with no air movement through the home. Like there's also problems with significant problems with indoor air quality in those buildings as well. And pulling an air system in when you do or replacement work or upgrade work on a boiler system is massively important as well.
Yeah, you opened the Pandora's box and said the magic word ERV or HRV for sure there. And I totally agree. It's if your project has the scope where you're going that deep in a remodel or absolutely a new construction, you need to consider a device like this, because it's going to help you both in summer and in winter exchange temperature in the favorable direction. So recover heat to help in the winter, and then also keep incoming fresh air cooler in the summer. It is possible to do in retrofit or remodel projects, a little trickier, but there's really cool products out there that use flexible ducting that can even be run in stud walls. So and this becomes the holy grail of current HVAC design, right? Where you're decoupling that fresh air, that ventilation air from your heating and cooling, your conditioning. And so that's really the best of both worlds, because you're getting that indoor air quality improved, and then you're not using air to provide heating and cooling because it's actually less efficient. And so that can help with first cost too, because then you can go to a ductless heat pump system, where that would have an individual unit in each room that would provide heating and cooling separate from a ducting system. So just another thing to consider for sure. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, these are all it's just really helpful insights, and thanks for everybody sharing your wisdom in the chat too. We've got a lot of expertise in our community, and so that's really awesome. I'm just aware of time, and I want to make sure we get a chance to circle back around to kind of some calls to action, and then I think if folks, I think some of the panelists may be able to hang around for a couple extra minutes after 6:15. And if you have a burning question that you really would like to answer, just hang on for a few minutes. We'll try to get back around to that. And again, we're taking note of all these questions in the chat too, and we'll try to follow up where it makes sense. So kind of as a closing, I think this presentation today gives a sense of the scope of what's possible when we think about electrification, from the community level right on down to all of us as individuals. We know not everyone as an individual is in a position to do work in their own home. But we can all be advocates for electrification. And could you tell us one thing that, or maybe a couple things that we can do to be advocates for getting off of gas and fossil fuels, and some of those pieces there?
There's so many things that you can do that I would recommend a couple things. I see a couple folks on here. There's Climate Smart Missoula, there's MEIC, there's Wild Earth Guardians. All of these organizations are doing things on oil and gas, and trying to move the needle on moving society away from gas, making gas internalize all of its costs, and electrify. And because there's so many things, I would say go to their websites and get on their action alert list, and you will find out the latest thing that's going on. For example, the state is going to be updating its building codes here very shortly, and there's going to be some rulemaking that the Montana Department of Labor is proposing. Generally, it's a very, very good thing. This is a really important upgrade to the state's building codes. So those rules should be out in the next week or two. And if you get on our alert list, we'll let you know when it's time to let the state know we want them to adopt the rules, with one minor change. And I won't even talk about what that is right now, but this is the Gianforte administration, and generally they've been pretty hostile to conservation related issues. So the more people that can try to push the Department of Labor to move forward with these building codes, the better. And I think that After you do that, after we get good building codes, it's up to the local governments to enforce them. And, you know, if you're all around Missoula, you're really lucky because Missoula is an outlier in Montana. But if you don't live in Missoula, I would urge you to contact your local government as soon as those codes get updated and ask them about what they do for building code enforcement, because a lot of them don't do much, if anything at all. So I think it's a two-step process: support the rules and then go to your local decision makers and ask them to really implement them. That's first and foremost.
Awesome, thanks, Anne. Kelly and Amy, you two want to chime in with things we can do, and we'll share all these in a follow-up as well.
Sure. Yeah, first things first, check out Electrify Missoula. We've got lots of resources and stories and ways to get involved. Like Anne said, building codes are huge. So any way you can weigh in and advocate to your local official in support of, and I can give you a list of all the appendices that you can throw your hat in the ring and support. That would be great. There's also some amazing kind of national resources out there. Rewiring America, Electrify Now, they all have kind of take the pledge to electrify newsletters and more info to stay up to date on the latest kind of building electrification news. Some really great articles come out pretty much daily on kind of the latest and greatest technology and what you can do to get involved. So there's, yeah, like Abby said, we'll follow up with all these links and ways to stay in touch. Amy, did you have anything more to add?
You know, I might just add in that there's the local things we can do locally. We are not done yet with still advocating to get a lot of the support for electrification in any kind of a federal, especially reconciliation bill. And I think we know that one of our senators is supportive of this, another one isn't, but we need to keep that drumbeat up. And we need to, because what's key in any kind of reconciliation bill is actually money that would help with rebates so that people could afford this more expensive technology. A lot of us want to do it, maybe some of us can afford it, but we really are thinking about the equity piece here. There are a lot of people that spend a lot of money on their energy bills, and there is additional funding that could come our way with both weatherization, so their homes are better insulated, and then this whole system change. So we can't stop advocating and demanding that at a federal level. And it's also just worth, I mean, we probably don't need to say this to the group here that's visiting us, but, you know, what are people running for office? What's their position on wanting to move on climate solutions, right? Let's ask them, let's demand that folks that are either in an elected office or running actually have a say in this and are leading on this. So, you know, of course we need to push that. We need to, you know, anything you can do, letters to the editor, just get out there and get behind some of the folks that will help bring some of these solutions to bear, because it really does, as Anne talked about it at the very beginning, it so matters as a climate solution piece. And we really we want to bring everybody along in this. And there's so much good opportunity if we could figure out some of that support from the federal level in particular. So that's my little beef. The only thing I'll mention, Abby and I were talking a little earlier about, you know, there's some local potential for growing some funds that could be supported by local government. We have a carbon offset footprint fund that we're hoping to kind of ramp up that would potentially bring in private monies that could then support some of this electrification with some of our low income housing, whether it's retrofits or new construction, so that we can again consider that strong link to affordable housing, that is possible to both have affordable housing and electrified buildings, and then, you know, consider that equity. So think about, yeah, who's making those big decisions, and then coming back locally, let's get some more funds available to people here. How's that? I'll leave it there because we are almost moving over.
We're over, but I'm going to add one more thing. Sorry, everyone. One of the things we know to build momentum is that people learn from their neighbor doing a thing or by, just storytelling. So if you have gone electric, if you've made the switch to a heat pump, if you've retrofitted your older home, if you've upgraded to an induction stove, and want to share your story, please reach out. We'd love to share your photos or 2 lines of how it went, decisions made, and kind of host it on our Electrify site so other people can learn from your project. So please reach out. Those stories are really critical to building momentum for this movement.
That's a great place to end it. 6:18, I think I call out a win, but with how much we had to cover, and we knew it would just be a whirlwind, but hopefully it was a useful and interesting hour, and we really appreciate all of you who are able to join us. We do have another webinar in the series coming up on May 4th, all about electrifying transportation. I just got an e-bike. It may or may not feature in this conversation. I'm pretty excited. I haven't even ridden it, and I'm already excited to tell you about it. So yeah, join us then. All the details, we can share those in the follow-up from this. So be sure to share your email with us, either in the chat or directly, and we'll be back in touch. And thanks again. Was there anything else? If anybody is able to stay on for a couple of minutes and really wants to do that, yeah, feel free, but we know you all have things to do and places to be. So thanks again for joining us, and hope you have a wonderful evening. Yeah. Amy, did you want to throw something in?
No, we'll end the recording right now so that we can just chat a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna stop that.